Hi, it's me, John B. Leaf, because you got a B-Leaf. Now we're back on the B-Leaf podcast. Today, we're going to be interviewing a movie journalist, a movie historian, movieologist. His name is Randall. Randall Movies.
Hi.
Randall Movies, how are ya?
Good.
Welcome to the B-Leaf podcast.
Thank you.
So, Randall, you've been recently writing a paper on Fox film.
Yes. And that's called 21st Century.
21st Century Fox.
Yeah. So the
Tell us
film.
about it.
So originally it was called Fox Film. When William Fox purchased a third share of a theater in 1904, and he expanded this to 15 similar theaters.
It's a lot of theaters.
Yeah, for the time, especially in the 1907s.
I don't have any theaters.
Yeah.
So, do you like the game Monopoly?
Yeah, it's actually very fun, but a non-fun Monopoly was a Monopoly on movies, which two companies formed to make a Monopoly on movies, which William Fox had none of it. He refused to sell out, and he sued, and guess what? He got him $370,000.
Sounds like my wife.
Okay, you divorced?
So, what are some films that the Fox films are known for back then?
Well, they made a lot of films with a lady called the Vamp. That was just her nickname, not her actual name, but you know.
She a vampire?
No, they started to seriously make some films by not leasing, and they built a permanent studio, not leasing.
What are you talking about?
And so, like, after the stock market crash of 1929, Fox had lost his fortune. He had lost his company due to bankruptcy, and he later had been arrested for bribery.
What happened in the year of 1935 to this company?
It merged with several other companies, mostly 20th Century Pictures. It was actually the only one. But 20th Century Pictures was made by high-ups and employees of other studios like United Artists, Warner Brothers, and it was financially backed by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And at this time, William Fox really had nothing to do with the company anymore.
Still called Fox, though.
Yeah.
Animal. So, this was around during the World Wars, this company.
Yeah. It became the third most profitable film studio, probably because people wanted someone to cheer them up and escape, really.
Excuse me.
And I guess they thought Fox did that the best, or the third best.
Yep, the revenues, good, bad?
Ugly. So during the 40s, they were pretty stable until the early 50s, where they had half the revenue in 1946. But if you go into the future, then they had half that in 1953.
In the future, any future technology that they used?
They used an experimental 3D projection method called Cinerama, and they renamed it to CinemaScope, which all their films would be made in. And this was their way to bring back the people, bring back the money, and it included 3 projectors, so it was pretty expensive. $25,000 per screen, and they upgraded all of it for people. Yeah, that includes inflation. They also allowed other... I'm tired here. They also allowed other studios to use this filming method, which many quickly adopted, like Columbia, MGM, Warner Brothers, Disney.
Now, at this point, what type of movies were they making?
Well,
Stars?
yeah, they had a lot of stars because I guess they were starting to get into the flow and the hustle and the flow. And once the Cinerama, Foxorama started to get old from people, and they thought it was a little bit dated, they started to have some pretty bad financial trouble, which led them to make a remake of Something's Got to Give with Marilyn Monroe, and this backfired on them pretty bad. And they had fired her due to her lateness and chronic sinusitis. And 2 months later, she was found dead.
So, type of movies they're making at this time? Stars that didn't kill themselves?
Well, there was another one with Elizabeth Taylor, who was pretty popular at the time. But Elizabeth Taylor with Cleopatra was a pretty huge money sponge through the early 1960s.
You know who else was a money sponge in the 60s?
Who?
The Beatles.
It's true.
They didn't ever do anything with Fox.
No. Let me tell you about Cleopatra. It costed $10 million for the time, and they had this other darn backlot.
What?
Fox. It cost $10 million. What's $10 million? They had to sell their backlot.
Wow.
You can't get
Break that down. Now, this movie Cleopatra, you said it worth $10 million. What can you tell me about the production of this movie?
Well, after Fox used Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe as scapegoats, they decided to make a company turnaround, and they fired half their staff, after rushing it into production at completion, and they made several cheap pictures that paid off, and it led to The Sound of Music, which saved the studio. And they also produced Star Wars, which quadrupled their stock price.
Now, is the company still owned by the same people?
Well, it was until the early 80s, 1981, where it was sold to two investors for $720 million, and then in 1985 to News Corporation for a lot less, for $575 million.
Oh, money they lost. Bad investment.
Well, one of them was caught for fraud, and they moved to Mexico.
So, how all this did we get to Fox News on the news today?
Well, in the second half of the 80s, 1986, Fox Broadcasting Company was formed, and it started to air. 1986, one of the best years.
So, Fox, you're telling me, started doing movies, and now we got Family Guy on TV and Tucker Carlson on TV doing the news. So after they started the news, did they keep expanding any further?
Well, they formed Fox Family Films in 1994, and in 1998, because all that animated films were so popular, it was renamed to Fox Animation Studios, and it only made animated flicks.
So going into Y2K, how did Fox continue to stay stable?
Well, they remained stable by internationally distributing movies for MGM and UA, which they were initially kind of formed from. But in 2008, they opened an Asian subsidiary called Fox Star Studios. In 2012, DreamWorks Animation signed a deal to distribute new movies until 2017. Only the new movies. Be with you. Force be with you. Sorry, this is a joke.
So what can you tell me about where Fox is at today?
Well, after the 2010s, in 2013, it was reformed, rebranded to 21st Century Fox, which is what I feel most people know it as today.
Horns and stuff.
They tried to put in two bids for Time Warner, which included CNN, which would be pretty funny. Fox and CNN owned by the same company. I wonder if they'd, and that was for $80 billion, and Time Warner had declined the offer, and they put in another bid a month later, which is why I say they had two. In 2017, Disney had announced to buy 21st Century Fox for $52.4 billion, and Comcast in 2018 had announced they were putting a counteroffer in, and then for $65 billion, and then Disney increased its bid to $71.3 billion, which Fox agreed to, and the sale had completed in 2019, and 21st Century Fox was rebranded to Fox Corporation.
So it's owned by Disney now.
Yep.
Seems like Disney owns everything now.
Yep. And we'll just continue to keep buying and buying.
Not this podcast. So they're getting their greedy damn hands around my neck.
So they acquired a 4.99% stake of online gambling operator the Stars Group for $236 million. In August 2019, Fox acquires Credible Labs for $367 million, and Bento Fox Entertainment for $50 million. And April 2020, Fox acquires Tubi for $440 million. The free movies and such. And only last month it was they acquired TMZ from Warner Media for $50 million. If you can't get CNN, get TMZ.
So, you heard it here from Randall, Movieman, that Fox started out as a humble movie film corporation and has transformed into one of the media and entertainment superpowers of the world, and is now owned by Disney and is continuing to make substantial purchases of even more media platforms and streaming services. Randall, it's been great to have you on to learn so very much about Fox Films 21st Century Fox.